Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Trial Day 7 was by far the most boring of the Laurie Vallow case by far. The afternoon session livened up when Laurie's former friend from Hawaii, April Raymond, added a splash of vivid pink to an otherwise monotonous day. But before April could start, there was some concern about April's many interviews with the media, including on Dr. Oz, an interview with Justin Lum, as well as an appearance in the Netflix docuseries from last year, Sins of Our Mother. I think she was on 2020 as well. This is a reminder of how simply participating in the media narrative, let alone the social media narrative, can jeopardize a prosecution's case. In any event, let's deal with the three biggest what the ifs from Trial Day 7, and that's obviously in my opinion. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Obviously, I will be in court tomorrow, but I'm at the court building every day. So if you want to get some first-hand insights, observations, photos, I'm probably going to do some interviews as well. Then you might want to, check out what's going on this channel. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. If you want to pay for my Uber in the morning, you're welcome to contribute, as you see fit. It's about $10 there, $10 back. And let's get started. So the one of the three biggest what the ifs from today is that Laurie took Charles's phone to Burger King. That was revealed by looking at the cell phone data. And so you kind of get the idea, similar to the Murdoch case, that she was trying to manufacture an alibi by going to the Burger King, but obviously taking the phone there maybe it wasn't such a good idea because it's revealing when she went there, right? It's interesting how much focus there's been on the murder of Charles Vallow when Laurie isn't actually facing a charge of murdering or conspiring to murder Charles Vallow. And as a result, you get constant objections from the defense that it's in terms of relevance, and then the judge constantly overrules it. But I think the reason why there's this focus on Charles Vallow is because it's a rare instance where we know where Laurie was. And we see her on body cam, and we know how she responded. We know what she said. So it gives a context. It gives an intertextual context to Laurie, perhaps in a different situation. Does that make sense? And so this is one of the things that came up. Laurie's demeanor, her nonchalance, her lack of emotion. I don't think it's so much lack of emotion, because I think she was showing herself to be kind of in a good mood and even laughing. I think it's her inappropriate emotion. And this was highlighted by a female officer. And although that's important, and I think it's not the first time we've seen that inappropriate behavior, think about the laughter during Colby's call that we dealt with yesterday. But I think the biggest revelation in terms of this aspect was that she actually took Charles's phone when she went to Burger King with JJ at 7:49. On that fateful day. Charles's phone then left Burger King at 7:56. About 7 minutes later, I think they used the drive-through. And then 911 was called at 8:36. Laurie seemed to be back at the residence at 8:48. This, I believe, actually suggests that Charles was killed much earlier, cleaned up, and then the alibi staged much as Murdoch did. And the reason I say that is I don't think Laurie would have actually been able to get his phone from him while he was alive. I think she took his phone after he was killed, right? And if it's true that Laurie took Charles's phone, it shows, in my opinion, just how silly she is in the criminal sense, but also possibly, you say, why did she take his phone? Why did she want his phone so badly? Well, perhaps it's to clean Charles's phone of incriminating texts. Remember, Chris Watts also wanted Shanann's phone in his Porsche for the same reason, and possibly also to access bank accounts via the spouse's phone. That brings us to the second what the if. Chair Daybell's 3 times $8,000 payments. Now, when you've been to Chad's property, you don't get a sense at all of someone living in luxury, someone having excess cash lying around. The significance of the financial narrative is really in juxtaposing the timeline and patterns of financial activity with the timeline of Tylee and JJ's deaths on September 9th and 23rd, respectively. We see rapid and serious shifts in financial patterns when these murders occur, indicating financial intent, indicative of some kind of financial intentionality, if nothing else. Incredibly, on the day Laurie's children were dug up from Chad Daybell's property, Chad allocated 3 payments of $8,000 apiece. 8 times 3 is $24,000. It's a chunk of change to his 3 eldest children. And so the question is, does this indicate guilty knowledge? Well, he wired the money in the morning, I think somewhere around 10 a.m., before human remains were found, before his arrest. And doesn't that suggest that he expected them to be found? And that's obviously going to be dealt with in Chad Daybell's trial. And that then brings us to what I think is one of, the biggest what the F today and one of the biggest what the Fs in this case. It gives you an idea of the kind of person, the kind of screwy beliefs that we're dealing with. And that is the third one. Laurie wanted me to leave my kids and join her cult. That's kind of an abbreviated way of saying what April was trying to say. This has been a shocking, crazy, weird as heck case from the get-go. And as I say, this is perhaps the biggest what the F of all. Just this idea that one mother would try to get another mother to, it's not just Laurie is accused of killing/abandoning her kids, but she was trying to get other mothers to do the same. And April was a mother of 2 boys. And so not only that, it's also that Laurie and apparently Melanie Gibb, if April's testimony is, if we can go by that, appear to be grooming April, according to April. And part of that process seemed to be the expectation that April drop everything and join Laurie's cult. I'm a goddess, I'm the chosen one. Oh, okay, just based on that, I will follow you. I will abandon my family. I will, abandon my job and do whatever you tell me. And so what that actually meant was abandoning her kids to her husband and then just, moving to Rexburg. And then presumably if her family became a problem, well, who knows? Would Chad then wave his magic wand and turn them into zombies? Would Alex then need to sort out the zombie problem? So close on the heels of that, what the F was Laurie telling April that Charles was, quote unquote, already dead as early as February 2019. So in the midst of her having an affair with Chad. And of course, she told April that Charles was having an affair on her. And I don't think he was. But what that meant, someone wondered, what does it mean that he was already dead? I mean, he wasn't already dead. What that meant was, in a spiritual sense, he was possessed and basically gone over to the dark side. In other words, who he really was no longer alive, according to their psychology. He was Ned Schneider. He was not Charles anymore. And I think Charles even used those words to the police to say, this is what she's saying about me. And they were sort of mystified. They didn't really know what to make of it. And of course, how do you tell someone in a sensible way what is going on when it's this kind of nonsense? The other thing that's really damaging is Laurie admitted that she was done with JJ. That was also in February. Bear in mind, she traveled to Hawaii with Tylee, not with JJ. And so this has to be very, very damaging to Laurie's case. And one senses these seeds from the prosecution are falling on fertile ground with the jury. Obviously, if this recruitment campaign had worked in terms of April, and also if Laurie had gotten $1 million in insurance, who knows how many more might have been recruited to the cult, how big that arsenal of weapons might have eventually gotten. It looks like Chad and Laurie had hopes of recruiting 144,000. Well, they got to about 4. Alex, Zulima, Melanie, and arguably Melanie Boudreau. It's 6 if we include Thor and Jason Moore, I think 2 users in the podcast group. And so just 6 people before it all went to pot. That's a really small-scale cult. It means they still had 138,000 recruits to go. What's interesting is if they truly believed doomsday was on the horizon, well, their financial records seem to show they forgot to prepare for it. No bags of rice, no buying of toilet paper in bulk, no tent supplies, just flights all over the place and lots of guns. It seems Alex's job was to silence enemies and detractors while Laurie and Chad enjoyed a fairy tale, seemingly at everyone else's expense. Often that is what fairy tales do. They create a nightmare alongside, and the bigger the fairy tale, the bigger the nightmare. In court, as I said, I sat in court. This time was more on the right-hand side, kind of right alongside the jury and almost in the same line as where the prosecutor was standing, the podium, and then the witness box opposite. And so there were times that Laurie seemed really uncomfortable, like slumped in her chair, almost hiding behind a monitor. She sometimes had her arms folded. On 2 occasions, including right at the end of the court session, Laurie seemed to make 2 biggish glances to the gallery. At one point, I thought she looked at me, which made me wonder, she spends a lot of time with her back to the gallery. She seems to ignore the gallery. And so when she does look that way, it's quite something. And these were quite penetrating glances. And it made me wonder what her lawyers tell her about what's being said about her in the media and online. They will be paying attention to how she's perceived vis-a-vis how she's portraying herself. Remember, the courtroom is a kind of theatre. She seems to be very friendly with Archibald, often looking at him, whispering in his ear, smiling, more so than with Thomas. In fact, when April left the courtroom, she sort of looked down at the floor as she walked. Laurie seemed to be smiling, as if dismissive of her kind of quote-unquote silly testimony. I did note at one point Laurie's face seemed to be red. She'd removed her glasses. She leaned forward. She poured herself something to drink from a silver jug. And then, as I say, April was excused. And then Laurie was smiling. I don't think the jury are as dismissive as perhaps Laurie wants them to be. They seem to be a good jury, and one of my patrons sitting beside me was emphasizing that. She's been taking a lot of notes on the jury, and we're going to be talking about that. But they seem to be a good jury, studiously taking notes, taking their cue from a gallery that's been packed with reporters and members of the public since day one. This is a high-profile case, and so it is worthy of their dedication and carefully considered discretion. Not that other cases aren't, but there's definitely a tension and a lot of attention focused on this trial, and I think they're feeling it. I also have confirmation that I'll be in court for trial day 8. I'll try to get a good night's sleep and do a live recap after proceedings conclude tomorrow, so look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.
Being a good mom is very important to me, and a good wife, and a good worker, and being all those things together is not easy. So I'm basically a ticking time bomb.